What's going on YouTube? It's Tej back again with another video, and today I have another NFL mock draft for you, but with a twist. For the first time on this channel, and honestly the first time I've ever done this, I have a mock draft with trades. Now, there are a ton of trades in this video, so temper your expectations. I wouldn't expect this many trades once we get to the NFL draft, but I wanted to make it interesting, and I hope you all enjoy. But first, I want to start by saying if you enjoy the video, please hit that thumbs up. I couldn't use the Draft Network website because the only way you can use trades is if you're a premium member. I'm not, so I had to type this up and then also make graphics for the trade. So this took me a little bit longer than a normal mock draft would. So if you could hit that like button, it would mean the world to me. And also, if you're new to the channel and like football content, I also have plenty of Madden content as well. Please consider hitting that subscribe button and comment your thoughts down below on this mock draft, what I got right, where I was wrong, and who you want your team to pick. I mentioned in the last mock draft, if you comment, I might feature you in the next mock draft video. And well, shout out to my man Mark Fowler. He put down a myriad of comments, and this one was an interesting one. Clearly seems to be a Dolphins fan, and he laid out, in his eyes, the right draft plan for Miami, taking Penei Sewell at pick number 13, then Kadarius Toney at 18. I like that a lot. Joseph Oweh at 36. I don't think he's going to get past the first round anymore after his great 40 time the other day. And at 55, Javonte Williams. I like that pick a lot as well. Monty Rice at 81, and then Tutu Atwell at 123. And if this was the draft for the Dolphins, I think it addresses pretty much all their big needs. Maybe an inside linebacker would be beneficial, but nonetheless, that would be a great draft there. And shout out to Mark Fowler for commenting. And you should comment your thoughts down below, and you have a chance to be featured in the next mock draft I do. But without further deliberation, let's go ahead and jump into this mock draft, starting with the Jacksonville Jaguars at pick number 1. You might as well start with the board having Trevor Lawrence's name on it. He's definitely going number 1, so we'll go ahead and quickly move on to the New York Jets. While it's not a guarantee, I'd put the odds at like 90 to 95% that Zach Wilson goes number 2, or at least a QB in general, and in my eyes, Zach Wilson is the right pick here for the Jets, and that's what I've had in every mock draft, so we won't talk about it for too long and drone on about it. But at pick number 3, this is where obviously the trades come in, and this is a fun one. I don't know if it's necessarily going to happen. I don't know. It seems like the Texans are really standing firm about not trading Watson, but I feel like you got to. And you got to do it before the draft because picks for the 2022 draft will hold very little value right after the end of the 2021 draft, at least in my perspective. And that's just typically how it goes because time is of the essence with these trades. So I have the Houston Texans getting their first round pick back here at number 3 overall, but also the 18th overall pick this year and Tua Tagovailoa, and a second round pick this year as well as next year. And in exchange, the Dolphins get Deshaun Watson and maybe a late round pick, maybe like a 4th, maybe a 5th in this year's draft. Look, I think the Dolphins are in on Tua, but if you get the chance to get Deshaun Watson, a true top 5 QB in the league, and at 25 years old, you pull the trigger. So let's go ahead and make the trade happen here. And with the Texans on the clock, let's say they go Jamar Chase. They got Tua in the trade. Now they got to go out and get a number 1 wide receiver. They didn't tag Will Fuller, so they definitely need an option now. And Jamar Chase, in my eyes, is wide receiver number 1. He's a really physical wide receiver. He high points the football really well. And you look at the tape, and it's amazing, and the talent suggests future all-pro level wide receiver number 1, and he's only 20 years old. I mean, it's remarkable how good he already is, and this is a really good wide receiver class, so for him, in my eyes, to be at the top of that list says a lot. And also, Houston, this just starts a new chapter, right? You get Tua in this trade after you made Deshaun Watson very unhappy, and now you get Jamar Chase, an admission of being wrong of sorts after trading away DeAndre Hopkins for next to nothing. So it's an opportunity to turn the page, move forward, and if you're GM Nick Caserio, I think that honestly is your best bet moving forward. Moving on to the Atlanta Falcons at pick number 4, Trey Lance. I like the upside here. I think I still have Fields at QB3, but I think the ceiling is a little higher with Trey Lance. Look, he's got an NFL caliber arm, an elite arm at that point, and he's actually a really talented and accurate passer of the football, especially down the field, and his legs speak for themselves. He's super athletic. It just comes down to having him adjust to the jump from FCS football to the NFL level. And in Atlanta, I think he has the chance to do that, sitting behind Matt Ryan, who's been a very accomplished quarterback at the NFL level, had a solid career, won an MVP award. It's a great place for Lance to learn and then eventually take over in year number 2, maybe even by the end of year 1. But nonetheless, I think this is the right spot for Lance, and I think it's the right pick for Atlanta moving forward. Moving on to pick number 5, I have another trade. And also, I should say, with these trades, I'm no expert. I'm not Bill Barnwell. I haven't worked in a front office, so you might think these trades are a little disproportionate from here on out. I think the Texans one's pretty spot on to what they'll get if the Texans decide to move on from Watson, that is. But from here on out, give me some slack. I'm not perfect when it comes to these trades. So this trade moves the Carolina Panthers up 3 picks, and then in return, Cincinnati gets the 8th overall pick and a 3rd rounder this year and next year. That was about even when it comes to that point total if you use the NFL trade chart that a lot of teams base this off of and a lot of analysts use as well. So if you type in Google NFL trade value, you'll see plenty of different websites have it up and you can take a glance at it. So I don't know. I feel like the Panthers had to give up a little bit more than this, but based off that sheet, this is equal value. And here, with the number 5 overall pick, I have the Carolina Panthers taking Justin Fields. This is the guy that will replace Teddy Bridgewater, maybe by the end of this regular season, but almost assuredly the next year in 2022. You cut Teddy Bridgewater, you save a ton of cap room, and then Matt Rule, who I don't see him picking at 8 or better in the NFL draft, again, during his tenure at Carolina, unless things just get really chaotic in that organization. So Rule can get his QB of the future and a really good one with Justin Fields. And that's the other thing. Like, QB3 in this class, a lot of times would be QB1 in most other classes. Like, Fields is almost in every other year a QB1 player. So I think the Panthers get good value. They move up from 8 to 5 and take Justin Fields. Moving on to the Philadelphia Eagles at 6. And this was a tough one. And Kyle Pitts is a tough player to mock because he's great. He's a top 5 player in this class in my eyes. But it's just when you look at him as a tight end, what team is going to make that move? Though I will say the Eagles, why I decided on them taking Pitts here at 6 as opposed to originally when I did this, Pitts fell all the way to 15, and I just said that's not going to happen. Pitts can be a wide receiver and a tight end, plus Philadelphia has used 2 tight end sets. They're likely moving, almost assuredly moving on from Zach Ertz, I should say. So you get Pitts, you have Dallas Goedert. Pitts can be an outside threat. He can be great in the red zone, and you pair him with Jalen Reagor on the outside as wide receiver weapons, or you go 2 tight end sets, and you create a bunch of mismatches with Goddard and Kyle Pitts, and you'll help out a player like Jalen Hurts a ton. QB could be in play here, but I think the Eagles let Hurts have a year to be the starter, and then you find out if he's the guy or not, and then you reassess that position next offseason. But to give him a fair shake, you get him an elite playmaker and maybe the 2nd, maybe 3rd best pass catcher overall if you take away the tight end designation. I think I like Pitts more than Devonta Smith. Maybe even more than Jalen Waddle just because of the injury concerns. I don't know. It's obviously really close, but Pitts here at 6. Let me know your thoughts, but in a lot of ways, I think it would work out really well for Philadelphia, and they have a ton of needs. So why not go best player available in my eyes, and that would be Kyle Pitts. And now I have another trade for you. The San Francisco 49ers moving up to pick number 7 to select Mac Jones. So don't focus on the details too much, even though I know it's on your screen right now. But the 49ers move up 5 picks. The Lions move back to 12, which they're a sneaky trade down team. They have so many holes that they just need an abundance of assets to try to fill those voids with good, talented young players. Plus the Lions got a 3rd and a 4th, again, basing it off that trade value sheet. But for San Francisco, you take Mac Jones at number 7, and I've heard a lot of people say, well, he's just Jimmy Garoppolo again. And I get that, but he's also a way cheaper Jimmy Garoppolo, right? Like, if you're going to get the same player, you might as well get the one who's not $23 million against the cap hit, and then you can bring back Trent Williams. You can try to sign a cornerback in free agency. It plays a ton of different factors. Granted, the draft does come after free agency, so I know that you're doing this in hindsight after what you do in free agency, but nonetheless, it's a good move in regards to the cap room, but also the 49ers can trade Jimmy Garoppolo. I think somebody would give them something. They might have to cut him, and they get nothing out of it, but I think the Patriots or some QB-needy team would give them a pick that helps recuperate the value that they gave up for moving from 12 up to number 7. But let me know what you think. And I actually think Mac Jones could be better than Jimmy Garoppolo. But I also think Garoppolo is good enough to win a Super Bowl. Like, if Trent Dilfer can win a Super Bowl behind an elite defense and a great running game, so can Jimmy G. Now the Cincinnati Bengals back on the clock at pick number 8, and they get their guy all along. Like, with the trades, obviously you're moving up to take QBs. And I mean, you could have Penei Sewell go number 3, but the Texans already have Laramie Tunsil. Maybe you play Sewell at guard, but you take a guard at 3. I don't know. It's more appealing to take a tackle in the top 5 to me, and then have a mid-round pick assigned to a potential guard of the future. So, but that's just my opinion. So the Bengals are patient. They get extra assets, and they still get Penei Sewell, who could be a Pro Bowl level guard day one, or you have him play left tackle and you move Jonah Williams over to right tackle. You move him inside to guard. There's plenty of possibilities, and that's a good spot. Just like in basketball, where you want position versatile players when you're early on in a rebuild. That's what the Bengals have really done, especially on the offensive line with Williams and now Penei Sewell in this mock draft. Having guys who can play a lot of different positions, so you're not just stuck with rigid tackle options or rigid guards. You have a ton of different flexibility, and it allows you to just target best player available in the later rounds, but also before this draft would have happened in free agency. On to the 9th overall pick, it's the Denver Broncos, and maybe they could have traded up and gone after a QB. I'm in the thinking that they give Locke another shot. He did battle injuries last year, but I'm also just a semi-believer in Drew Lock. I think he can be a good QB. He hasn't looked like it so far, but I just don't want to rule it out. And what this team could use, despite a good year from Michael Ojemudia as a rookie, and you would think he's going to keep getting better, and you have Bryce Callahan, who's an elite slot corner, they could still use an elite CB1 on the perimeter, and Caleb Farley is already really technically sound, and then with his speed and frame, he gives you that upside. Like, this is a guy who, I'm not saying it's going to happen, could become a Jalen Ramsey level type of player. If everything breaks right and Farley puts in the work necessary, he could be that good in my eyes. And that'd be a huge add for this Denver defense. And you got to think, who do they play in their division? They see the Chiefs offense twice a year. They play the Raiders twice a year, and they play Justin Herbert and the Chargers twice a year. You want to have good cornerback play because you're facing a lot of good QBs and wide receivers. And Farley would help that team potentially be the perfect answer to those 3 really good to elite level offenses. Moving on to the Cowboys at pick number 10, I'm going back to the cornerback group and Patrick Surtain. You reunite Surtain and Diggs, who played together at Alabama. And I actually heard something the other day, Diggs is kind of slow, so maybe you don't want to take Surtain because he's not necessarily as athletic or as fast as someone like Caleb Farley. Trevon Diggs ran a 4.41 last year at the Combine, and he had a Combine, so that's like an official number as opposed to these 40-day numbers, which could be skewed. Nonetheless, this Cowboys team needs another cornerback. You might not be able to afford Chidobe Awuzie, and you might not need to if you go with Surtain here. If they bring Awuzie back, I could see a player like Rashaan Slater going here, no doubt about it. But they also restructured some contracts for Lyle Collins, Zach Martin, and Tyron Smith. So they have some more cap space, and that allows them to address some other needs or maybe find better depth across the offensive line. I really like the pick here with Surtain. You get a good, young, and pretty cheap potential CB1 of the future there in Dallas. On to another NFC East team, the New York Giants, and I have them taking Jalen Waddle. And you're starting to see this in a lot of mock drafts, which makes me think it's almost certainly not going to happen, just because we can't all be thinking it and then it actually happened. But nonetheless, if Waddle were to fall into the Giants' hands, I think they'd be crazy not to take him. They need an elite separator. That's Jalen Waddle. And they also just need a big play guy. I mean, Slayton can be that, Darius Slayton that is, can be a deep threat, home run type of guy, but Waddle can do it in a lot of different ways, right? Waddle can beat his guy and give you the 80-yard touchdown by throwing the deep bomb in his direction. But he can also get you an 80-yard touchdown by just throwing him a screen and getting him in open space, and he's electric with the football in his hands. And by doing that, you make the game easier for Daniel Jones. And there's a lot of reasons to think he might not be a franchise QB, so dumb it down. Get him a weapon that can make it easy for him, and I think Jalen Waddle is just that. Next up at number 12 is the Detroit Lions, and I have them taking the other Alabama wide receiver, Devonta Smith. And I don't get the rationale behind not tagging Kenny Golladay. It would have been cheaper than the long-term deal he's looking for. I mean, I think they could still sign him, but I don't know. If I'm Kenny Golladay, now that I have the choice, I might even opt to take a little less money to go play for, a competitive team. I've been stuck in Detroit with lousy roster after lousy roster surrounding him. Now we can go play for a potential Super Bowl contender. And with that said, even if they bring Golladay back, they need another wide receiver. They're losing Marvin Jones. But especially if they lose Kenny Golladay, they need to find a future wide receiver 1, and they got to get weapons for Jared Goff. That's the only way you're going to find out if he's actually your guy moving forward and if he's going to be your franchise QB. And Devonta Smith, the knock on him is his small frame, but you look at the tape, and you forget about the fact that he's 6'1", 175, and you're focused on how well he beats people off the line. It looks like Davante Adams. I'm not saying he's going to be Davante Adams, but the way he makes people just look silly off the line, it's crazy. He's an elite route runner, very soft hands, and he has a lot of those skills that you want, and he's very athletic. Overall, he's a great wide receiver in just about any other class. He'd easily be wide receiver number 1. He's an elite talent. The Lions need wide receiver. It makes sense to me. Next up, pick number 13, I have another trade for you. And this was easily the hardest trade to try to find what would be an equal value. I thought about having the team swap picks, but then the point differential between 13 and 27, Orlando Brown has to be worth more than that. You're talking about a 26-year-old franchise left tackle. So I decided that the Ravens would get 13, while the Chargers get Orlando Brown and a second-round pick from the Ravens. I'm not saying it's even, so definitely don't hold me to this one, but we've been hearing trade rumors around Orlando Brown, and honestly, the Chargers make a ton of sense. And they could go get a young player like Rashaan Slater here at 13, who I have the Ravens taking here. He has a ton of different flexibility. It allows the Chargers to play him at tackle, guard, maybe even center down the line. And I wouldn't knock you if you made that argument. You get a young franchise tackle in the draft the year after you take your franchise QB in Justin Herbert. I can totally get behind that. But nonetheless, Orlando Brown's proven. He's a 26-year-old, like I said, so he's not old. It's not like you're getting Trent Williams, who's only got a year or two, maybe 3 left. Talking about a guy who's got plenty of playing time left to go. He wants to play left tackle. He's on the block. Makes a ton of sense to go ahead and just get somebody who's been there, done that. You know what he's about, and you get a second-round pick out of it. So, that's not too bad, at least if this trade were to happen. And then meanwhile, if you're Baltimore, Brown wants out. You probably have to bow down to his wishes. He doesn't want to play right tackle, and he will likely hold out if you keep him around. So, with the 13th overall pick, I have the Baltimore Ravens drafting Orlando Brown's replacement in Rashaan Slater. And this is a team that already needed IOL pretty badly, and then Brown asked for a trade, so Slater might be kicking inside to play right guard. They've been really weak at that spot since Marshall Yana retired, or he could just straight up play right tackle and legitimately be the replacement to Orlando Brown. I think it works for both sides. I'm not 100% positive on that value, so don't hold me to it again, but nonetheless, I think it's an interesting thought experiment. And I will say, if the Dolphins didn't trade 18 in that Deshaun Watson trade I mocked up earlier, I think it makes a ton of sense for the Dolphins to trade 18 for Orlando Brown. And I know Brown wants to play left tackle, but he would serve that role at right tackle for Tua, and then you can just pay him like a left tackle. But that's for another video, and maybe I'll do another one of these mock drafts with trades involved and mix up who moves up and who moves down, all that stuff. Comment down below if you would want to see that. I think it'd be another fun one. I enjoyed making this mock draft, so I don't see why I wouldn't enjoy doing it again, right? So, moving on to pick number 14, the Minnesota Vikings could go offensive line. They did cut Riley Reiff today as the time I'm recording this. A lot of cap casualties around the league. Riley Reiff ultimately just making too much money. So I don't know what the Vikings want to do at left tackle. Maybe they're moving Ezra Cleveland from inside to go play that tackle spot, and then IOL becomes even more of a need. Maybe this should be Elijah Vera Tucker, but I don't know. Maybe you wait and draft someone like Wyatt Davis day 2, and then you move Ezra Cleveland over to left tackle. I don't know. I also plan on doing a 2-round mock draft, and once I get to do that, maybe that will change how I look at teams' first-round needs. But with that said, I think Kwity Paye makes a ton of sense. High upside player. He's a freak athlete in a lot of ways, reminds me of Danielle Hunter. And Hunter is coming back from a very scary neck injury, so Paye could both lighten the load for Hunter this year, but also be the guy who takes over as the elite edge rusher potentially for this Minnesota team down the line. They also get Michael Pierce back, which will help in the run game, and I think Kwity Paye is already a pretty decent defender in the run game. And plus, Minnesota's track record of developing edge rushers is just ridiculous. I mean, you go back, I guess a decade now, which is crazy to think, but Jared Allen kind of busted on the scene out of nowhere. Everson Griffin, Danielle Hunter, we've already mentioned. I mean, that's like the developmental spot for Minnesota. They thrive in that. Like the Steelers with wide receivers, that's Minnesota with defensive linemen. So I think Kwity Paye makes a ton of sense there. Moving on to pick number 15, I think the slide stops here for Micah Parsons. I think the Patriots grab him here. They'll have Donta Hightower back after opting out this past season. and it could definitely be a handing off of the torch from Hightower to Parsons. But also think about linebackers in the Bill Belichick era. He wants guys who can do a lot of different things. Think Kyle Van Noy, and he just got cut. Maybe he just goes back to New England. I don't know. But Micah Parsons could be that type of player for Bill Belichick and that Pats defense. He shoots the gap. He's a freak athlete. He might have some concerns in coverage, but I think he can be coached up and improved upon in those areas. And at Penn State, he was a good situational pass rusher, and I think Bill Belichick and the Patriots would find ways to continue that at the next level. So I like the fit a lot, and I think the Patriots are one of those teams that would get the most out of Parsons. Moving on to the Cardinals at pick number 16, I'm sticking with J.C. Horn. I've continued to have them taking him here. They need cornerback. They shouldn't bring back Patrick Peterson. They need to let Drake Kirkpatrick walk. Horn in a lot of other years would be cornerback number 1. He's got the size. He's got the athleticism. He's almost technically sound. He gets a little handsy, grabs a little too much, and he'll get those flags against him. But again, that's an area you can be coached up and improved upon. And honestly, a lot of cornerbacks have to walk that line, and it changes week by week. Some referee crews throw the flag quicker than others, right? So some weeks you can get away with it more than others. So part of it's going to be adapting to week by week what you can and cannot get away with. So I think J.C. Horn's a fantastic player, and it feels a huge need for the Cardinals, so I'm going to continue to mock him here at 16. Oakland Raiders hold the 17th pick, and back-to-back drafts now. I'm going to go ahead and have him take Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. He's a freak athlete, sideline to sideline linebacker, though he's also just like a safety in the box, sub linebacker, that modern, like kind of like Derwin James, what I said last video. In a lot of ways, it makes a ton. Jeremy Chin's another good example of it, and that's kind of who I would mock him to. Also, when you look at the Raiders, they play Travis Kelce twice a year. And if the Chargers re-sign Hunter Henry, they'll play him twice a year. So at the minimum, I think Owusu-Koramoah is the tight end negator in the AFC West. And I mean, that would be a huge benefit, and it would slow down a lot of really good offenses that the Raiders play in that division. But he's also great in the run game. He's, as I said, fantastic in the pass game, and he'd be a big step in the right direction for that Raiders defense that needs a lot of work. On to pick number 18. Here is the second pick that the Houston Texans got from the Miami Dolphins. They need edge help, and Jalen Phillips, take away the concussion concerns, I think I'm hopping on the bandwagon and saying he would be edge 1. He's a freak athlete. He stayed on the field and put up a great year this past season at Miami. And there's not much on the tape that you look at and say, oh, he needs to get better at there. He's super talented. He's really refined, and he's already one of those players that day one could become an elite pass rusher. He really could. It just comes down to, can he stay on the field? Concussions stick around with players. But take that away, the Houston Texans have an opportunity to get potentially the J.J. Watt replacement. I'm not saying he's going to be that. Again, I'm not saying that, but losing Watt, obviously don't have Clowney anymore. This team, when they were at their best and they were in the playoffs, that front seven was the strength of that defense and maybe the strength of the team overall. And they need to get back to that, and I think Jalen Phillips can be a good step in the right direction. The Washington football team hold the 19th pick, and I have him taking Christian Darrisaw, so hometown kid of sorts, product of Virginia Tech. And I think Washington goes after a veteran QB. Otherwise, maybe they do move up and they take someone like Mac Jones, or maybe they move up even more and go after Justin Fields or Trey Lance or whoever may be available. But I think here you hold tight, you take Darrisaw at 19, and then in free agency, hopefully you have gotten a QB. Maybe they trade for Marcus Mariota. Maybe they just sign Ryan Fitzpatrick and see what he could do in a year's work. And they also hopefully sign a wide receiver, maybe somebody like Kenny Golladay. I think that would be a really awesome fit opposite of Terry McLaurin. If they spend their money in free agency, it makes a ton of sense. Go get your franchise left tackle here in the draft. And this is a really stout tackle draft class. So maybe they go wide receiver here and wait till day 2 to get a tackle. It wouldn't be the end of the world. And I think they have that flexibility with their draft plan. Moving on to the Chicago Bears at pick number 20. They did franchise tag Allen Robinson, but I think I'm going to hold on and keep Rashad Bateman at this pick. Tackle makes a ton of sense. They could also go with someone like Kadarius Toney. I wouldn't hate either one of those options. But where my mind is at is Allen Robinson doesn't want to stick around long term, so he becomes a tag and traded player. Maybe New England gives up some picks and go after Allen Robinson. Plenty of other wide receiver needy teams could make the move. So because of that, I don't really foresee Robinson sticking around, and therefore the Bears draft Rashad Bateman as his replacement. Very similar player. And Bateman allegedly ran a sub 4.440. Again, no NFL Combine, so take that number with a grain of salt, but if he's that fast, with that frame, those hands, ability to make tough catches over the middle of the field, he's a pretty solid route runner, knows how to create just enough separation. Not elite, but he makes enough separation. He knows how to make the tough catches, especially in the red zone. So you give him that speed. If that number is anywhere near right, he's a future wide receiver 1 for the Bears. Moving on to the Colts at 21. This could be edge. They definitely need an edge rusher. And there's a couple of good tackles on the market. We mentioned Riley Reif is now on the market, and they could definitely go spend big money on Trent Williams. I like that fit a lot. But I'll say that they spend money on edge and free agency and instead opt to take a tackle in Sam Cosmi here at 21. Cosmi, you got to feel bad for him. In any other class, he's top 15 pick, safe probably. But there's so many good tackles in this class that he just bumps down the board, and ultimately the Colts get awesome value. And I think Indianapolis could go wide receiver here too, but I think they'll be a team that opts to either, again, spend money in free agency or wait till day 2 to address that need. Cosmi's your plug-and-play day 1 left tackle, and it helps make that transition for Carson Wentz that much easier. Next up's the Tennessee Titans at pick number 22, and Azeez Ojulari is a perfect fit for that 3-4 defense. And they need edge help. I won't drone on about this pick for too long. It makes sense on so many different levels. I think it's almost certainly going to be edge, maybe corner here for Tennessee, but Azeez Ojulari fits the need, fits the scheme. I think it's a match made in heaven. The Jets hold the 23rd pick, and Kadarius Toney would be a really fun player to watch play with Zach Wilson, who I had the Jets taking at number 2. Also allows you to go ahead and just cut Jamison Crowder. He's still a good football player, but his cap hit, if my memory serves, is a little over $10 million. And the Jets have plenty of cap room, but there's just no need to pay Crowder that much. Plus, if you're Jamison Crowder, you might be looking for those scissors so you can go try to play for a contender. Maybe you go play for cheap in Green Bay or something. Just throwing that one out there. But nonetheless, Kadarius Toney could be that slot, electric, big play receiver of the future. Him and Denzel Mims. And then maybe they go spend big money on Juju Smith-Schuster. That'd be a really nice wide receiver trio there in New York. Again, all speculation, but I like Toney to the Jets a lot here at 23. My favorite team, the Pittsburgh Steelers, on the clock at 24. Jalen Mayfield makes too much sense to pass on here. He could be a run-blocking mauler at right tackle, but I have a suspicion they would go ahead and keep him at left tackle. They might just re-sign Zach Banner and play him at left tackle. And they could also go Landon Dickerson at center here if they bring back Filer, Banner, or Alejandro Villanueva, or at least 2 of those 3. Then they might just go IOL instead with a player like Landon Dickerson, or they could go Najee Harris. Spoiler alert, don't have any running backs here in the first round, because they're really tough to mock, because you don't want to overvalue them based off of running backs and how they're viewed in the league nowadays, but nonetheless, their talent speaks, and Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, they're superstars. But also, I think the Steelers could go get like Javonte Williams in the second round. I think that makes a ton of sense, allows them to be patient. You get offensive line here, go running back in the second round, and hopefully that improves that running game. I can only pray, at least. Moving on to the Jacksonville Jaguars at 25. I got them taking the number 1 safety in the class, Trevon Moehrig. I like Javon Holland a ton, but I think Moehrig's the only first-round safety. He could be the number 1 strong safety or the number 1 free safety in this class. He's great in the box. He's great away from the line of scrimmage in deep coverage. There's plenty of good things you could say about him. And with Justin Simmons being tagged by the Broncos, that took away the player that I was saying the Jags need to go throw every dollar they can in his direction. So instead, they can't get Simmons. Go ahead and get Moehrig here at pick number 25 and address a team that really needs 2 safeties, especially after they traded Ronnie Harrison last year for almost nothing, and I don't get why. The Cleveland Browns hold the 26th pick, and I have them taking Zaven Collins. He's so versatile. He can be an inside linebacker. He could be a situational pass rusher. And ultimately, the Browns need both. So I think Collins can fill both shoes. I really like the idea in third and long situations. Collins opposite of Garrett. I think there's a ton to like there if you're a Cleveland fan. But also, when it comes to being a run stopper, you can play him on the inside and try to slow down a team like Tennessee, who you might see in the playoffs, or the Steelers if they get that run game revitalized. You play the Bengals twice a year, and Joe Mixon if he's healthy. Plenty of different ways you could play Collins, and that's the player the Browns need. They don't have anybody in that linebacking core that you're like, can't replace this guy. He's too good. So why not get a guy who would be an improvement both on the inside, outside, and as an edge rusher, as you're probably going to lose, or almost assuredly going to lose, Olivier Vernon. So I think it makes a ton of sense, but again, that's just the way I see it. Moving on to another AFC North team, it's the Baltimore Ravens for their second first-round pick. And here I have them taking the best possible edge player left on the board. And it's not necessarily a great fit. I think Rousseau probably is better in a 4-3, but the Ravens need edge. They're probably not getting Matthew Judon back. I don't know if they re-sign Yannick Ngakoue, so you kind of have to go with Rousseau here. You could go wide receiver and Terrence Marshall, but ultimately I think they spend money on wide receiver and then draft edge. That could change. You could also wait till day 2 to get someone like Tutu Atwell or something like that to address that wide receiver need. But the Ravens have a great coaching staff, and they develop players among the best of any team in the league. So I think Rousseau makes sense, and I think he could become a player in a couple years that we're like, wow, look at what the Ravens did. How did he fall all the way to 27? And like maybe it's just a match made in heaven. Saints hold the 28th pick, and they need linebacker. They're trying to shop Quan Alexander. They'll probably just cut him. They need to create cap room. Nick Bolton is the replacement. Super rangy, big thumper up the middle. It addresses a need, and it makes that defense better. And honestly, they're already pretty good, especially against the run, but I like Bolton a lot, and it really addresses the one weak spot they have on that side of the football. Next up, the Green Bay Packers. I have them taking Eric Stokes. They got to move on from Kevin King. Obviously, everybody looks to the playoff game against the Bucs and the play he lets up to Scotty Miller at the half, but already I didn't think Kevin King was anything great. And if you get Eric Stokes opposite of Jair Alexander, I think you have two really solid CBs. Stokes is uber athletic. I like his tape. He's good in man coverage. This could also maybe be Asante Samuel Jr. I've been seeing him sneak in the first round in a few mocks, especially PFF mocks. I seem to like him a lot. But I think Stokes would be who I'd want opposite of Jair Alexander. Of course, this could be wide receiver. It could be offensive line. A lot of different places the Packers could go. Maybe this is Elijah Vera Tucker, which, speaking of Vera Tucker, that's who I have the Bills taking. And pick number 30, they probably don't bring back Darrell Williams. They already need a guard, and Vera Tucker gives you the flexibility to have him be the Williams replacement or play on the inside and try to improve that run game, which wasn't spectacular. This could also be a Najee Harris spot. This could also be corner, maybe someone like Newsome from UCF. A lot of different ways the Bills could address this pick. On to pick number 31, though. The Kansas City Chiefs today cut Eric Fisher and Mitchell Schwartz. I originally had Terrence Marshall going here, and I was really excited to talk about it. But now you got to go tackle. They have Lucas Niang, who they took last year. So you get Niang back, and then I think you take Tevin Jenkins here. Opportunity to replace Fisher and Schwartz with two cheaper players. And plus, Jenkins is a mauler in the run game, so I'm sure Clyde Edwards-Helaire would be ecstatic about this pick. But after seeing Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl playing without Fisher and Schwartz, the offseason game plan has to be keeping Patrick Mahomes upright, get him a clean pocket, and Tevin Jenkins definitely helps out after you move on from Fisher and Schwartz. And with the final pick of the first round, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going upside here with Jason Owe. He was timed at running a 4.38 40. Again, you can't guarantee it, but that freak athleticism, plus the hurries and pressure stats are on his side. He had no sacks at Penn State, but if you look at the pressures numbers and the athleticism, this feels like a developmental edge rusher of the future for Tampa Bay. I'm not even sure they necessarily get to bring Shaq Barrett back now that he's on the open market, but if they do, then you have JPP around for one more year, then Owe becomes a starter down the line, and ultimately, just like we said with Rousseau, it could be something where in a couple years we look back and say, how did he fall to the end of the first round? But let me know what you think in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. If you're new to the channel and enjoyed, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It would mean the world to me. And until next time, everybody, my name's Tej, and I'm signing off.
I'm part of the last generation that remembers time of God.